Hi guys, so I have seen a lot of people asking if you can grill and air fry at the same time. And to answer your question, no, you can't. You have to choose one function. You can only use one function at a time. So these are functions. This right here is the grill grate. And using the grill grate does not necessarily mean that you are grilling. This is the grill function. So right now I'm using Air Crisp and it's on the default 390 and it is preheating right now. So what I have in here, this is the Air Crisp basket. I'm not going to touch it because it's already hot. And this is the base pan. You always want to use the base pan in your unit. Your unit will not or should not function without the base pan. So I'm going to make some steak and cheese today. And this is the shaved steak that's already chopped up, but it's frozen. So that's why it looks like it does. So I'm letting it stay in there during the preheat time so that it helps to defrost it. And it usually preheats for right about 3 minutes, and it does start cooking your food during that preheat time. So that's why when it'll say add food, that's when you can add food. But if you can go ahead and add food during the preheat time, just make sure that you count those 3 minutes as part of your cooking time. So it told me to add food, but these are still pretty frozen and they're not ready to break up yet. So I'm just gonna turn them over and put it back in, and you can see it still says add food. Then when you close the lid, then it'll start cooking. And the Air Crisp defaults to 20 minutes. I stay right here by my unit. So in this, I'm not really gonna worry about setting the timer. I'm just gonna leave it on the 20 minutes just like it is. And then I just go by the countdown time. So if I know that this is probably going to want to cook for about 10 minutes, then, I can still see, oh, there's 10 minutes left. So I don't worry too much about setting my timer when I'm doing stuff like this, because I know by how the meat looks, and then I can also check the temperature of it. So we are 3 minutes into the cooking time, as you can see by the time that's left. So I'm gonna come check these, see how they're doing, and they are starting to defrost and starting to get a little bit brown. So I'm gonna start to separate them a little bit. So if you're already working with shaved steak that is already fresh, then you just have a little bit of advantage, and your cooking time obviously isn't going to take as long as what this would. But, this just is handy because if you're someone that, if you're cooking for one, or you're just cooking for two, or you're not sure, I'm using some Montreal steak seasoning on this. If you're not sure, how many people you're going to be cooking for, and you want to meal prep ahead of time and freeze some of this up, you certainly can. This, I will tell you, was frozen from Schwann's, just because my supermarket has been out of shaved beef. I've been trying to get shaved beef from the supermarket for about the past 6 weeks, and every time I go to place my order, they've been sold out. So this came from Schwann's, and I've had it before. It's pretty tasty, so that's what I decided to use. But you can, you can get your beef from any store, fresh or frozen. It'll work the same. It's just going to take a little bit longer if it's frozen. So I'm going to let that continue to cook. So we're approaching about 9 minutes on the timer. Check and see how they're doing. Starting to look good. Now I probably should have checked this a couple minutes ago, But I got a little bit sidetracked, which, hey, it happens sometimes, right? You know? But we're just going to deal with it. And we will work with it and make it work. So what I'm doing is I'm pushing this all over to the side. Okay, I'm making room in here for my tater tots. And I'm also, I have frozen diced onions and peppers. I really like time savers. I'm just going, I have about a cup's worth. I'm just going to add those right over the top. And a little got over. I'll push them over. I'm going to add those right on the top of the beef. And pretty much they're covering the beef, which what that's going to do is help the beef not to cook quite as fast, because the beef is a little bit ahead of where I would have liked it to be, because I got sidetracked over here and wasn't really paying attention to the time. So I'm going to add some tots right here. So I've added my tots. I needed both hands for that. And I have them pretty well spread around to where it's mostly a single layer. Some are a little doubled up, but they're still going to be able to get some airflow through there. So we're going to let those cook some more. Okay, so we've got 3 minutes left on the timer. Let's check and see how they're doing. Well, the tots are definitely not ready yet, which I figured they probably wouldn't be. The peppers are looking good. The steak is looking really good. And I'm just going to carefully turn it a little bit as to not interrupt the tater tots. Now, if you need to cook for more than 1 or 2 people, if you need to cook more steak and cheese than this, which this steak and cheese is right at 7 ounces. Each frozen portion was 3.5 ounces, so this is right at 7 ounces of steak in there, which, you know, that's not a ton, even though the recommended serving size is closer to the 3.5 4 ounces. You know, a lot of people do want that good, 7-8 ounces. Some people may even want more than that. So this could be for 2 people. This could also be for 1 hungry person. So if you need to cook more than this, what I would recommend is cooking your protein first and then cooking your tots second. The protein is more forgivable, and it tends to keep its heat. I'm adding some cheese in here. Trying to get most of it on top of the steak and peppers, but if I do end up with some on the tots, that's okay too. And then I'm going to let that cook some more. Now we're getting low on time, and I'm going to have to add some more time. So be mindful of that you don't run out of time. If you do, it's going to beep at you, and you can just quickly add some more time. We can go ahead and do that right now, actually. So let me wait till it gets to 2.5, just so we know about how much time. So there's 2.5 left. So I'm just going to go ahead and go to 7, just to pick a number. And then it'll restart its timer. With this, it's pretty easy to tell when it's ready because it's just more by the looks of it. Now, if you were cooking a steak, you would want to use a meat thermometer and check the internal temperature of that steak or chicken or whatever. And they come in all different shapes, sizes. There's electric ones, there's simple ones. And what you would do, if you have the smart unit and you have the probe, then you're all set. You don't need to worry about this. But for those of us that don't, you would just get your thermometer, and I'm gonna stick it in a tater tot, but you know, pretend that we're sticking it in a nice steak. And you want to make sure that it's not poking down onto the metal pan. You want just really the middle of that cut of meat. And, you know, open it up, take the internal temperature of it, and cook it until it's whatever safe temperature for whatever cut of meat that you are cooking. And sometimes people get hung up on the time and temperature, but really it varies based on your ingredients, the thickness, and also the starting temperature. So did you start it frozen? Did you start it fresh? Did you start it, you know, halfway in between? Was it straight out of the refrigerator? Was it room temperature? Had it been out for 30 minutes? Had it maybe been out for an hour? Did it come directly from the grocery store and maybe you had, you know, a long drive home from the grocery store and then you just put all your groceries away? And did you maybe get it out of the meat counter, or, you know, 2 hours ago maybe? So it completely depends on the starting temperature and also the thickness. Is it thin? Is it thick? Is it chopped up? Is it not? So all of that really varies, but for your own safety, you should really get a meat thermometer of some kind and just check that internal temperature to make sure that it's right. Now with a tater tot, you know that if the outside is looking crispy and happy, that it's more than likely going to be okay on the inside. And I haven't ever heard of anybody getting, you know, really sick from a not all the way done tater tot. But with the tater tot, you can tell, oh, it's not done, and you can put it right back in. But you don't want to take that chance with a meat product, you know, that could actually make you sick. So we are almost out of time. We're down to, well, 39 seconds now. And we're going to take a look in here. So that cheese is looking really good, nice and bubbly. And the tots are looking good. Let me just carefully reach in here and check. Yep, the tots feel nice and good. So we're going to put the buns in here and just warm the buns up a little bit. So I added the bun, and we're just going to let it cook the rest of the time. And then I'm just going to do 30 seconds because the bun was already room temperature, and I don't really want it that toasty. And remember, the meat had also been cooked longer than I had planned on before I added the other stuff. So it probably cooked about 3 minutes longer than what I would have wanted, so I don't want it in there for very much longer. So we toasted the bun, and I only toasted this bun for about 30 seconds. That was really all it needed. I didn't want it very crispy. It was already room temperature. I just wanted to give it a little bit of crispness to it. Now, I did cook this steak longer than what I would have, and that was because I got distracted. I'm not really a person that cooks on video, and someone started talking to me and I got sidetracked. I wasn't really paying attention to the time. So it did cook longer than what I usually would have had it cook for. Typically, the steak and cheese has taken about 10 minutes for the steak, and then usually another couple minutes for the cheese to get bubbly. And the tots, they look great, they taste great, and they're fine, but they actually stayed in longer than what they would have too. Usually I cook my tots between about 9 to, well, sometimes 9 minutes and they're fine, but 11 minutes right around in there. And this did end up cooking longer than what it normally would have, but it's still great. It's still edible, and, you know, is still a nice meal. And that's one thing I like about the grill, is there is a level of forgiveness there, because, you know, you do get sidetracked. Like, this happens, you know, in every day. And I could have very easily said, you know what, I'm not going to show them this. Let me just make another one. I have more meat. I have more tots. I have more buns. Let me just do it over. But I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do a redo. And, you know, I'm not a professional YouTuber or anything. I just did this video because I was seeing so many people asking, can you do, you know, 2 functions at once? How do you cook your sides? How do you cook your protein? So if I would have needed to cook more of the steak, I would have cooked the steak first and added the peppers in. But what you can do is then take it out and let it rest while you're cooking the tots. And then you can add it back in and melt the cheese over the top. And that's going to warm it up all over again. And it's going to be great. So don't worry so much about that. The meat is usually pretty forgiving. And, you know, you take it out, you let it rest, and it continues to cook some too. So, that's how I personally do it. Some people have more than one unit and they'll use more than one unit at a time. For me, I'm usually cooking for one, so that's not really an issue. But if you have a larger family, you know, then that is certainly something that you can consider. So anyway, hope this is helpful. I'm gonna go so I can devour this because I've sampled a couple pieces and it's very good. Okay, so my pan has cooled off for several hours, and this is what's left after cooking my steak and cheese. Now that looks like a pretty bad burnt on mess, doesn't it? All I have is a paper towel. Just wiping over the top with a dry paper towel. Look, I'm not even pressing that hard, just a little bit of pressure from the side of it, because I don't want to press so hard on the crispies that they somehow try to scratch the pan. So just some pressure coming from the side in like a sweeping motion. And look at that. I don't know if you can see it. Look. Most of all those crispies came right on up. All that burnt stuff. All the little pieces of cheese and onion and meat. All of that. They just came right on up. And those were like really stuck onto the pan before I started doing this. Turn this upside down. And again, that was just one dry paper towel, just wiping from the side. And that was all I've done. And you can see most of those came right on up. There's a few loose ones in there. All I gotta do is wipe it again. They'll come right out too. It's as simple as that. So when everybody says, oh, it's such a pain to clean these pans, not really. And if I had something that was really stubborn, I would just get a little tablespoon of water, put it in there, do the same thing. It'll loosen up and come right on up. That's all you gotta do.